to session 4 of today's conference, The Economy Beyond Pandemics, Lessons on Sustainability and Resilience. My name is Hana Šudáková, I work at JIC, and I will be your host here and today. The COVID pandemic has challenged our usual ways of working and disrupted our economies beyond imagination. What will it mean for sustainability and the Green Deal? And will the environmental issue remain active talking point as economic recovery becomes the topic of the day? I find this topic fascinating, and not being an expert in this field myself, I have many questions for those who are. I believe that you might have some questions as well, and if you do, please use the app and ask them at the application or at the app of the conference. We will try to answer them here, and if we don't have the time or don't manage to do that, you can definitely catch our speakers later on during the networking and maybe ask them yourself personally. By this, let me introduce our panelists for this session who will share their point of view and hopefully will inspire us as well. First, let me introduce Ms. Alice Machova. She's a partner at EY.
Good afternoon.
And we have the wrong slide here, so let me just, well, I will just click and hopefully I will end up at the right slide. And I definitely will. One more. There are so many of them here. Yeah, almost there. Hopefully it won't fall down.
There.
Yeah, we are here. Alice is partner at EY, where she helps companies understand the risks and opportunities arising from climate change and sustainability issues. Welcome, Alice.
Thank you.
Also here next to me is Mr. Jiří Hlavenka, who you have met already during the opening keynote. He is an entrepreneur, investor, and in recent years also a public figure and politician. Welcome.
Oh, again, I like to think of figure.
Public figure. Okay. And joining us online, if I might ask to switch to their faces, is once again Peter Dröll, Director for Prosperity, Directorate-General Research and Innovation of European Commission. Peter has been working in the European Commission for more than 20 years in various positions in environment, industry policy, innovation and research. Welcome, Peter. And we have actually talked about the company of the next guest here in the previous session about Circle.com. You might have heard about them. Our final guest today is Mr. Cyril Klepek, founder and CEO of Circle.com, and as I might say, one of the pioneers of circular economy in Czech Republic. Welcome, Cyril. So thank you for joining us here today, and as usual, we will start with a short presentation from Alice Machova. Alice, I will give you the clicker so you can switch the slides. This presentation will set the scene for our following discussion, and I remind you once again to use your app if you have any questions you would like to ask. Alice, it's yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, again. I'm glad that there are so many of you, actually, because I've been wondering after so many presentations that we already had and the great networking that we are having, so good to see you here. So my name is Alice, as I was already presented, and I'm a partner in EY. So I would say that I actually represent, let's say, the international and the Czech aspect of sustainability, because I've been working with clients on sustainability and ESG for many years now, since 2015. Actually, that was my first project around sustainability. And I have to say that actually the last year, the boom that we've seen and the interest in ESG and sustainability and how many requests we are getting from even smaller companies is quite incredible. And it's not just Czech Republic, we can see this trend actually internationally. And here I can say that it's actually great to be part of the company like EY, because you can reach out to the experts pretty much all around the world. And so if we are trying to solve some problem here in the Czech Republic, you can make sure that actually somebody else already dealt with it on some other part of the world. So for us, this is actually quite inspiring, and the COVID made it even easier for us because you can connect with great people online and have them there. So What I wanted to start with is actually something that you heard already about this afternoon. So this past year and what we are currently experiencing is really very special in terms of how many things are happening at once. So we can see the climate actually worsening. We can see the rising prices. We can see the, let's say, geopolitical tension rising in the world. And also we can see all these tensions happening. And on top of it, you get COVID. So, one can be here and be really doomed about the future of our world if you just sort of look at it like this all in once. But as some other people here said, I'm an optimist as well. So I like to think about it so what's the actually way out of this, right? How do we think differently? And I think that a lot of us, how we sit here, we had time to think about this, how we do things differently within the past year, right? As we were sort of reconsidering how we do the business. And I think that's a great opportunity for sustainability, actually, to show us how we can do things and business differently. You can actually argue, and a lot of people do, that sustainability has been around for a long time. And lots of discussions around sustainability, even in the West companies that we've been working with. Sustainability has been a topic for decades, and not much has changed, right? So why do we suddenly think that things are going to be different? And we do think that they're going to be different. Why they were not different is because sustainability for some companies was just a topic, and they didn't really incorporate it into their strategies. It wasn't part of their core business. So why is it different now? Well, I think it's different, and the question was here already many times as well. It's different for a lot of different reasons, but what we can see and what we talk to our clients about, it's the investors actually demanding companies, how are you sustainable? What are you doing to be sustainable? How can you prove us actually that you are sustainable? And that goes back to the reporting and having the ESG strategy, and how you can show actually that what you're doing is actually transforming into numbers and that you can show that to the investors. It's driven by consumers, it's driven by peers, because when you see your competition actually doing something around sustainability, that suddenly makes you think, do I lag behind if I don't start doing something? So already we can see a lot of companies just being pressured by their peers. And the governments. So that's the next slide, and we have Peter here for that, and it's been mentioned in the afternoon. But there is now a lot of money and a lot of funding actually going into this area, which is great. So as part of the transformation and as part of the post-COVID situation that we have, there is currently a lot of subsidies will be available. So it's not just the modernization fund that you might have heard about, which is focusing on energy, but also recovery and resiliency facility, where you actually can find lots of subsidies for innovative projects, even for SMEs or even more so. So definitely something I would say for the audience here to focus on, if something is there for you, because it was mentioned many times that there is. So what do we see when we look at the companies? I would say this applies to the whole world, not just Czech Republic, that some of the companies are just sitting there and thinking, this will pass. It's just another trend, and what is EU telling us? And I don't want to do anything, and I don't have to. That I would hope that this first group is going to be in a minority soon. The second group of companies that you can see, they sort of start thinking about it, but they are not really taking it seriously. They sort of think, I will implement this ESG strategy, or I will just extend my CSR, and that will be it. But that's not really what we want to see, and that would be the greenwashing that we hear about, right? So really the thing that we are promoting as well is the third path, which is the more, let's say, complex one, but where you actually incorporate sustainability into your business. You really do think about the products, the services that you are offering, something that was mentioned by Vašek Muchna in the very beginning, actually. So how to actually use it as an opportunity, how to do the business differently, how to make revenues out of it. And we really do believe that these types of companies are the ones who are going to thrive in the future. Just wanted to show you here some of the examples of how Czech companies are already acting upon sustainability. So these are examples of some of the projects that we've done just recently. So I won't go through all of them, but the first one is actually a brewery, a state-owned brewery. So we were helping them with the ESG strategy, so to set up their goals, mainly in the environmental section. So being a brewery company, they were obviously mainly interested in energy and CO2 calculations. So we helped them to calculate CO2 footprint and to set goals in that area. CO2 calculations is actually something that is like the basic starting point for environmental goals. And not many companies, or hardly any, are currently doing it. And maybe if I can just ask a question here, if you are from a company, can somebody raise the hand who knows what is their CO2 footprint as a company? IKEA. And I think this just gives you a very good perspective, and that's really a basic, starting point to actually know what is your CO2 emission level, right? So only then you can start setting up goals. How do you decarbonize? So the other one that I was going to mention is actually decarbonization strategy for an energy company. Because we have quite a significant group of energy experts. So we were helping them to set up a plan on how to actually switch from coal to biomass and also how to find funding for it. So quite an interesting one. And then you also have some companies who are already thinking about how do you verify those numbers? How do you, verify this in financial reporting? So we are doing some assurance projects as well, and that's something that we're gonna see more in the future too. And I always like to mention one of my favorite EY entrepreneurs, Mr. Musil. So Mr. Musil, you might have heard about, he's from the company called Lycos. And they actually do great stuff in terms of environment, because they came up with their own green roof and green walls for the logistic halls. So actually from the business that we all know, and we have lots of logistic halls, they are trying to improve them and make them more environmental friendly. So to wrap up on what I've been just saying, and just for you to have something in mind when you go away from the conference and think about your company and why you should be thinking about sustainability, I have these 5 topics here. So what I mentioned, financing opportunities, definitely number 1 now as well. Leadership and brand enhancement. When you look at how many Czech companies you know and you think of them as a sustainable business, there is very few, and you can name them on, I would say, a couple of fingers. So there is definitely a big opportunity for all of us, I think, to get more visible. And even if we are already doing a lot of things, just to show it to the public that you are doing it. Employees, definitely, the young people. So everybody we talk to, even in EY, our colleagues, they are very keen to work on the projects for sustainability. And I'm sure for the companies who are sustainable, it's then easier to find the right employees and who are keen. And innovation, I would close on that. I mean, it's been mentioned here a couple of times. So innovation is definitely something that can change the future and drive us all forward. So with that, I would like to close and give a space for the questions and the discussion. Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you. So now let's start the discussion with the one simple question, or with a rather hard answer. And I would like to ask you all to answer it, but make it short and sweet. So is sustainability still as big of a topic as it was before COVID-19? I will start with Jiří.
Well, even bigger. Yeah? I believe that COVID was a break. Yeah? That it was a pause. Yeah? We paused for a year or 2. Everybody which was frozen with COVID. Hey, what are we doing? We need to focus on COVID. But when the COVID is slowly subsiding, then this topic is emerging again with a greater urgency. Yeah? You surely know that research after research shows that the situation is changing faster. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you. I will put it in my mouth. Yeah. So the situation is changing faster. We have less and less time. So it is here again with the greater urgency.
Alice?
Yeah, I would just reconfirm what I said in my part, so
Okay.
definitely, and I can see it from the demand that we currently have.
Okay, Cyril, what about you? What do you think about this topic? And please unmute yourself.
I have to agree with my colleagues in Brno. I think we need to distinguish between the short-term and long-term threats, and in the mid-term and long-term. By far, the climate change is the biggest threat for both planet and the business. So I think the urgency is even bigger.
Thank you. And Peter, you definitely please answer this question as well, but I will add another question specifically for you. Do you think that the goals of the carbon neutrality are still achievable even with the economic disruption that COVID has caused?
Yeah, thanks. Let me add some sweet figures here. Why, and I agree with you, it's even more important than before. Let me add some figures how we have focused, and the Czech Republic has focused the recovery on the green transition. More than 42% of the 6 billion EU Next Generation EU funding for the Czech Republic is destined for the sustainability objectives, and then comes digital transition, etc. So this is a huge push now at the right time, reflecting the urgency we all see and are aware of. So is it still feasible? I think we have all it takes to achieve the targets. You have seen that the targets for 2030, which is almost tomorrow, it's one investment cycle for many bigger energy-intensive sectors, are more than 50 or at least 55%. So it's really ambitious. But I think it is because the overall direction is clear, and because, and Alice said it in her very good introduction, business is now taking it seriously. And we also the financial stream, the private funding, not only the public, but also the private funding is now more and more seeing this as a future. And we have agreed and are working still on taxonomy to make sure that we can define and know for sure whether an investment does harm or does not make harm, or whether it's really green. Mm-hmm. So we are on a very important but possible path.
Okay, thank you so much. Jiří, your predictions and your analysis on Facebook are famous. I'm one of your followers. But I would like to ask you...
I'm trembling. Yes.
I would like to ask you now, what is your prediction for European and maybe specifically Czech post-pandemic economy for the nearest future? Are we seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, or is it a train coming in the opposite direction?
Well, I would say that maybe I will try to counter with the answer, which is the popular saying, crisis. What crisis? Yeah. Okay. Actually, all the economic indicators seems to be very sound, and the economy seems to be pretty strong. The growth figures, okay, there was a slump in the first wave of COVID, but now we see high demand for goods, high demand for services, pretty nice economic growth. On the other side, we have it is at a cost of great, immense public spending. Yeah? Actually, the countries in all over the world have solved the crisis that the poor are huge money in the economies. Just to illustrate, in Czech Republic, what happened? Suddenly, 800,000 people became, which is like 13% of workforce, has become a state employees. Became on the payroll of the state without doing nothing. Yeah? That's obviously not sustainable. Yeah? But this is question of the government debts and all that. But economy in itself was not hit. Yeah? It is difficult to see if there could come something very bad in the economy. Probably the shortage of some materials, increased cost, as I spoke in my keynote speech or opening speech, is some threat, but I don't see generally a truly bad signs in the economy, which may be kind of some surprising when with COVID and post-COVID, but well, the indicators don't lie. Yeah?
What do you think are the most important lessons that we have learned from the COVID crisis, and how can we use them when dealing with the climate crisis? Alice, what do you think?
Well, I mentioned it before, so I will just say it again. I think we learn how to be more agile, how to basically act quickly, how to think about how we do the business differently. And I would also say that we also seen that like when there is a real crisis, the politicians and the governments and the countries, they can cooperate and then they can come up with solutions very quickly, right? And I think that's something that we should try to use as a parallel to actually the climate crisis that is there, and just to put more pressure on people, businesses. But I think here in the Czech Republic, it's more about education, really. It was mentioned that we don't learn about these things. They don't learn about it in Switzerland. We don't certainly learn about it here, right? We all do our own self-education. We read stuff on the internet, the popular books, etc. But there is very little education and a little talk about it in general public, I would say, here in Czech specifically.
Something maybe for Peter and Cyril. Do you think that there are some specific skills or tools that business ecosystem needs to have to face the climate crisis? What are some specific things that we really need maybe to build or to enhance for the future to be able to face the climate crisis? Peter, if you might start, please.
Okay, thanks. So I think what we've learned is that we need to look at our strategic dependencies. We've seen it with protective material during the crisis. That we need to look how can we have a more robust access to the resources we need. That requires a bit of reshoring or nearshoring, looking at our value chains globally and reaching out to trusted partners. That is, for me, one big lesson for policy, and at EU level we are acting on that. The second is that we need to look into more flexibility, which comes with the need for being more resilient. Because we know, and you mentioned it, there will be future crises and shocks. So let me just give you one example, flexible manufacturing, that we repurpose existing manufacturing facilities for what is now needed in the next crisis. And that is a lesson we have learned and which we are now trying, actually the Commission will propose very soon a new task force and agency for preparedness, health preparedness and responsiveness, which will deal with these issues as well. So these are one of the lessons I would like to mention.
Cyril?
Well, what we experienced in Circle was somehow like a deglobalization in the companies, like a supply chain. They were searching for local partners because there was much better cooperation with them during the COVID time. So instead of Chinese partner actually giving you a lot of plastic materials, we are opting out for some local partner, which was wonderful. We talked to companies many times to actually do it because it also make an environmental point of view. So that was definitely an interesting thing. And for the future, to be less fragile, I think the local community around the companies, local supply chain is also very important. But I think what is super important to have for the next crisis is not just to have a very good and very big amount of entrepreneurs that actually will be really, pushing the innovation and fostering innovation, but also I think very effective government. The governance, I think in general, was something we quite missed in the future. And I'm not, the biggest fan of the big government, but it was very obvious that we need a very effective government and governance in general for the next crisis and for the fighting climate crisis even more.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about that, there is a question from the audience that I find really interesting, and maybe it's for all of you. If you were a regulator and could pass one regulation to move us towards a more sustainable world, which one would it be? It's challenging. I don't know who would like to start. Maybe Jiří?
Carbon tax. Carbon tax.
Mm-hmm.
Simple, fast, with great effect.
What the others think about that?
I would say put financial value to those non-financial indicators. Really, like it was already talked about as a value balancing act is currently working on it. So actually put a price on, decarbonization, put a price on if you train your people and you train them well and, they then can give this to society, how do you value that? So put price and plus value on those things, and then we will all understand what it means.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah.
I chicken out. I don't have one proposal to make. It's so complex, so broad. Think of chemicals, think of manufacturing, think of energy, energy supply. So one regulation will not do it, and that is part of the challenge we have. We need a system change, and government, as Cyril said, is very important in that, but society equally and business. So I chicken out. I can't offer one single regulation.
It's okay, we will forgive you. Thank you anyway. Cyril, do you have one simple solution for the climate crisis?
No, unfortunately not. But I would add to the camp of Mr. Hlavenka. I think really we need to change the architecture of choice. We need to change the price tag we are having on different products, because they don't bear all the negative externalities, or the price and the cost of negative externalities. So the carbon tax might be one of the solutions. But also, I really agree with what Petr mentioned. It's super complex, and there is no time to go for simple solutions. We need to really have like a multiple approaches. But the carbon tax actually put a price tag on the carbon, and then to change the architecture of choice for consumer and both for businesses is a good way forward.
When I was studying the papers and everything for today's discussion, and I was trying to get to the resources and the information, I was just wondering whether the role of SMEs is really as strong as we might think. Like, what part in the whole effort do SMEs hold? Like, how important is it for them to be involved in the whole sustainable movement? Who would like to talk about this topic? And maybe Cyril and Alice, you work with the companies, so you might see how they approach this and what they actually think. Whether, as Alice spoke about the 3 stages of accepting the need to be sustainable, are we still in the second tier, like doing it for marketing purposes, or are they actually moving there to the third one? But what I'm wondering is really how important is their part in this effort?
Okay, I'll take it. So I think it's super important. I do think like now we say it's sustainable. It's kind of like we say digital, a couple of years ago. I think it's an opportunity for the startups, for the innovations, so for sure. But even for the ones who are not innovating, like definitely we can all, even as individuals, play a role. So for sure, SMEs and small companies, even with their own behavior, even if they change small things, use different cars, use solar electricity, whatever, it all adds up, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say it's definitely important. And also, as we said before, it's complex, but let's not get bogged down by the complexity. I mean, we can all find like easy steps, and important thing is to start.
Mm-hmm. Jiří wants to add something because before we let Cyril talk.
Yes. I don't want to, or I don't like to generalize. Yeah. Obviously, therefore, some SMEs is just the very reason of existence. Yeah, this is the reason why they are even able to exist, to thrive, to be successful. In general, let's be general. For most of the SMEs, it is difficult. Yeah? Because in general, SME is a company which is not yet very professional. It is usually a company which is understaffed, overworked, is sort of fighting for their place on the sun, because it's not so easy to be SME. And well, to be honest, there is not their top priority. The corporations have great visibility. They are professional. There are a lot of resources. For them, there is also a matter of reputation. SME is not there. Yeah. So in general, for the SMEs, it is a little bit harder than for again in general than for example, corporations. And we see it in the reality that it is even surprising that the corporations that were used to be a very non-ecological, non-sustainable are now turning. Yeah.
And I was just at some conference, and there were actually German representatives, and they were saying the same. And they were like, we think that on top, like on the corporate level, we are doing pretty okay, but the SMEs, that's where we need to do more work, and we have to try harder, basically.
Cyril, would you like to add?
Well, I think the huge corporations are very slowly moving boats. They need much more like those small boats, that will help them to get to the point B, right? And those like the startups, so those middle market companies, they can be very agile and they can be very fast. And some of those are also in the list of future Fortune 500, right? So basically, I think it has a great potential for those companies to build a know-how how to transform those huge mammals, huge companies, and then also export the know-how to the rest of the world. And it's, I think, a great opportunity for also, for example, Czech startups and the middle market companies, because when we will decarbonize the Czech economy, we can actually really export the know-how to the rest of the world and teach basically other countries how to switch a very highly industrial economy to the green one. So I think there's a great opportunity for SMEs companies.
Okay, thank you. I think Peter mentioned during the first keynote that there are plenty of opportunities and possibilities to get some sort of financing, even for the SMEs, and it's only really about to go out there and look for them and try to find them because the possibilities are there. So definitely, even if it's hard for the SMEs, there is some encouragement. I was just wondering, do you think that like who is the main motivator, or who should be the main motivator for the SMEs to actually go sustainable? Is it the investor? Is the government? Is the EU? Or is it the customer? Who should be there? Like, who should push them the most to go sustainable? Maybe Jiří, if you would, or Alica, if you would like to start.
I'll just say that it always works if the owner believes in it, you know, and he wants to do it, and he wants to be sustainable, then it works for the SMEs. There is no need to push. That's what I would say. And I think all these factors that you mentioned are currently working in the favor of it, but you couldn't name one. But what is really important to have the owner who believes in this way.
They may be also a business driver. When the SME has a competitor who is a large corporation, which is slow mover, then he desperately needs to differentiate somehow. And sustainability, or other factors like, let's say, to having some public benefit in more general, can be a differentiating factor that leads to the success. So we are different than the others. Yeah? So that's the factor.
Cyril, what do you think?
Well, I think it has to be the market. We need to really change the architectural choice on the market itself, that the market is the main driver, because of course there's a lot of energy from the founders, right? It will last some time, but then it has to be, a market forces actually will really help you to get business out of it, and that's the key part. So the market has to be really the main part.
Mm-hmm. And maybe Peter, from your perspective, from Brussels' perspective, who should it be? Or what should it be?
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I would say the state plays probably the most important role. And let me explain briefly why. I agree with Alica. The entrepreneur himself, the owner, needs to be convinced. I agree with Cyril. The market, you need to have a return on investment. But the major shift we need, and which is happening now, would not happen if we did not have, at a political level, at a government level, but at a societal level, an awareness of the emergency, of the risks, of the urgency to act, and an agreement on the targets and how to do that. And that is what makes me so positive, because I'm many years now in the European matters. It's my passion. I have never seen a European Commission which had one big overarching project, and with a dimension we have now with the Green Deal, and that will show the direction and set the markets. So I think the governments are very important.
Cyril, you are working with many companies who are actually there wanting to go the sustainable way. And I was wondering whether the COVID has changed somehow their perspective, or whether they are more cautious maybe now, whether they are more courageous maybe now in the moment. So do you see any difference between now and maybe January of 2020 or and before in their perception of sustainability as a topic for their business?
I would say they are much faster. Really, the digital revolution actually came with all these Zoom calls and so on. It really makes it very faster. You don't need to go to the plant. You have a Zoom call and you discuss all the materials via Zoom call, and you can do something in a week time. So that's one perspective. Also, I'm really happy that companies are more moving into not just there's a sustainability, what to do with it, but more like there's sustainability, let's get the data, let's really analyze, and that's something also Alica mentioned. I'm really happy that more and more companies are actually analyzing their footprint, and then based on the data, they are making better decisions than before. So it's not just straws, it's really like a super impactful thing. So that's something I can really see that it has changed over the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Alica, have you seen some changes with the companies that you work with?
Yeah, big time, because I've been organizing these events on sustainability in EY for a couple of years now, so I can definitely see the shift in demand in them, and also like the attendance, who actually attends them, right? Because in the beginning when we started a couple of years ago, it used to be maybe a CSR representative from the company or somebody from marketing, and now we get like CEOs and CFOs attending those and being interested in the topic. So that's what I would say.
And do you think that the companies here are actually aware of the short-term risks that might be coming their way, that are bound together with sustainability? Like, for example, in one study says that in 7 years there will be lack of material for building industry. So do they actually know about these short-term problems that they might be actually facing in their day-to-day work?
You just mentioned it depends on the industry. So real estate companies, we talk to quite a lot, so I would say they are. They do see the impacts. They are talking about the certifications. They also do realize that the financing from the banks is going to look at like how sustainable the buildings are. So it really is driven by the industry. So the ones who are most, let's say, potentially impacted are aware, I would say.
Okay. And Jiří, I have a question for you, because we spoke about that one of the drivers might be also the investors. In the last panel discussion, there was talk about the impact investment and how the whole thing is like moving towards more meaningful investments, let's say. Do you think that Czech investors do actually care about whether their possible investments or the companies that they would like to invest are sustainable? Is it a factor there? And is it maybe different here than in the rest of Europe?
Difficult to compare, but talking about, let's say, fellow billionaires, I would say that, well, and this is, okay, I will be brutally honest, because it is fashionable. Let's be honest here, it is fashionable. I don't think that there really are of very firm belief, and again, it is difficult to generalize, as it is necessary, and it is a necessity for everyone to act, because it is still, well, I'm one, we are 7 billion and so on, and I'm wealthy, but still I'm one. But it is really fashionable, which is actually not so bad when it is fashionable, because everybody wants this good karma. Even the billionaires want good karma. That's right. So well, I believe that this is a driver, but on the other hand, okay, this was a little bit rude. I can even now speak for a group of let's say, angel investors, I mean, that nobody wants to do harm. And if the project we are evaluating has, I will be again, I go a little more general, has a public benefit, which, let's say, the sustainability, a subset of public benefit. There are a lot more public benefits than just sustainability. So, for example, helping healthcare, helping social care. This doesn't need to be exactly sustainable, but it has a public benefit. Then it is like plus. This is like in global evaluation, it is like 1+, which is pretty strong. We really, and I believe, we really, most of us wants to help to build a better world. because that's something that makes you happy, actually. Yeah? And I think that this is a change. Yeah? That 10 years ago, I would be doubtful to answer that. And okay, we have, for example, one of the wealthiest Czech people is a guy who actually bet against climate change. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. Yeah, I hope he will go bankrupt soon from that. Yeah? And this is changing. This is really changing in the way I've just told.
We have last couple of minutes on this panel discussion, and we started with easy questions with a hard answer, and we will end with one as well. And maybe from your day-to-day practice, Alice and Cyril, and maybe from your bigger overview, Peter and Jiří, what do you think are some low-hanging fruits for the companies that actually start incorporating sustainability into their business? What is it there for them that can be like the short-term motivator to do it, to invest, even in the long-term solutions, even in the long-term things that will maybe bring some points to them in the farther future? Cyril, would you like to start?
Yeah, it's quite simple answer from my side. A couple of months ago, I read a very nice article in The Economist, and it was analyzing the cost of mitigating 1 ton of CO2 in every phase, and basically there was one area that we were actually saving money and at the same time reducing the CO2, and it was the material handling. There was the circular waste management. So basically, for example, in circular waste management, what you do in Circle is a very strong business case even nowadays. So you can really save money and at the same time save a lot of CO2. So just in the 6 months of this year, the first half, we just analyzed it nowadays, and it was 1.2 million euros we helped to save in our circular waste cans to our companies, and 8,500 tons of CO2, which also has a price tag. Now, I think the allowance is something like 35 euros. So definitely material handling, waste management, it has a very nice low-hanging fruit.
Alice?
Well, I would say it's important to, again, which industry you're in, right? And it was mentioned here, we talk a lot about E and the green and so on, but it's important to realize that sustainability is about social as well. So let's say if you are in services, actually, you might not save that much on your CO2 and decarbonization, right? Because you rent an office, but then you should actually think about your service, how can you make it more social, how can you add some benefits to the society? So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Jiří?
I need to try to find a common denominator, because every company is different. And when I'm looking at this, then a common denominator are facilities. So every company has a facility, and also the place about the public sphere. It means municipalities. So to start there. And this is, I believe, the long-hanging fruit to look at, or let's say water management with the great water. Look at the energy management, with conservation, with green walls, with photovoltaics, with battery in the solar, with things like that, with waste management. This is serious business and so on. And so this is, I believe, pretty long-hanging fruit, because in most of the things, there is even medium-term return. And that's something that every businessman should say, hey, this has a return of 8 years, even without subsidies, with subsidies 5. Well, great, I'm going for it. So this is what should be the next step of most of the companies that have some facilities, which essentially is almost everyone.
It's actually to be smart. Okay, Peter, from your perspective, do you see some low-hanging fruit, some inspiration for us?
Yeah, very interesting answers, by the way. So I'm not sure whether I can add something, but let me take one example. If you are in an industrial complex, so where different companies are, I'm talking about the manufacturing, for instance, then what we call industrial symbiosis is a low-hanging fruit, that your waste streams become the resource of your neighbor and vice versa. That can be water, that can be heat, that can be gases. And what we found out is actually it makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't happen because it requires trust among the companies and the kind of that there is no trade secrets leaking, etc. And it requires a bit of a moderation. So this is an action we are doing, which I think is a low-hanging fruit, because you don't need a big technological investment to make it happen.
Okay, so we will end up on the optimistic note, maybe more before comparing to the last session. So thank you for that. I would like to thank once again for your participation here. So thanks to Cyril Klepek. Thanks to
Thank you very much.
Peter
My pleasure.
Dröll. Thanks to Peter Dröll. Thanks to Alice Machova.
Thank you.
And thanks to Jiří Hlavenka.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, our audience, for your attention. I will highly encourage you to use the opportunity of next couple of minutes for networking and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.